I should probably read my own lesson notes. Okay. So we've made, so the fix here, our test didn't run because we created our class, it was not public. So the unit testing framework couldn't see it. So we want to make sure our class is public. Now it does tell me my result is not null. However, we want to check that it actually loads the proper view. So in my product controller, I should probably change the return statement so that explicitly before we're passing the data, the first parameter should be index as a string. So we're going to want to check two things. We're going to want to check that we get a method called index, and then we're going to want a separate test where we actually check that we get a list of products and that it's sorted. Actually, no, we're not sorting the list. So I'm going to add this first parameter. And then there's a couple of different ways we can check to make sure in our test. So you mentioned one way by making the call asynchronously. That would work.
Well, the method's asynchronous.
Right.
To get it as a view result, so that the assert works, you have to go through the same kind of procedure.
Right. So it's asynchronous. It uses an async, await with async. Okay, so we'll take out our assert not null. Okay, Peter, so how did you want to change this?
What I did was I set bar result equal to product controller dot index like that.
Yep.
And then I ran result dot wait.
Yep.
And, then you create a new variable.
Yep.
Bar, I guess.
I'll call it view result maybe.
Result, yeah. And that equals result dot result as view result.
Yeah, as, or you could do a cast.
Yeah.
And then we are checking. I'm not actually sure we need this, to be honest with you. I think it will work without it. I'm going to comment it out. So we get an I action result, then cast that. I think our test is still going to run this way. Let's see, I'll run it again. So my test still passes. Oh, sorry, it's rerunning it. I shouldn't. Spoke too soon. Yeah, it will work with or without the wait. Yeah, so we need the extra conversion from out of I action result. It's using the dot result property, and that gives us a view result. And for those of you just joining us, make sure your return statement in your controller explicitly names the view as index. So in product controller.
Sorry, so we just changed our result, we're capturing that, and then we're casting the result.
The dot result property cast as a view result. And your controller method needs to explicitly return a view with the name of index.
Would you mind showing that?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
So
Thank you,
you
Josh.
just append, okay.
You put that becomes the first parameter before the data. The data becomes the second parameter.
And that would still work for when we want to do the thing on the actual website.
Yep, that won't affect the actual website at all. It's still loading. So we can see where we're getting. So index really should have two unit tests, right? We'll see what percentage of the code it says is covered by this. We're checking that we get the proper view coming out of it. Oh, look, we're up to 14%. Woohoo. So if we go to our controller and our order, our products controller, Oh. So overall, our products controller is 6.9%, but it says our index method is 100% covered. It's not really though. All we've tested is that it returns a view called index. And that's one important test. But we also need to look at how do we unit test for the data now. And this is where we're going to use our in-memory database instead of SQL Server.
It looks a little more complex.
It looks a little more complex because it's more complex.
Okay, I was hoping you were.
So first thing we will do is we'll create a list of products. No, this is declared at the class level. So we can use it in many different unit tests. And we need to make a reference to system.collections.generic. Unit test doesn't know what a .NET list object is. So we'll just accept the reference. In our test initialize, we're going to populate a list of mock products and put that list in our fake context object. So before, this line is now going to come at the end. We're not going to instantiate the controller until we've mocked up the data. So that'll be last. With mock data in the dependency. So that's got to be the last thing that happens. Create a new in-memory context object, and now create mock data and add to in-memory database. And then we'll create our controller and say, here's your in-memory data object with some fake data in it. So we'll create maybe 3 mock products. We'll say products.add a new product. So we'll make product ID, I don't know, 10. Product name is prod1. Price is 10. We can leave the description out, but we do need to give it a category. Actually, I'll make one mock category first, and we'll attach all the products to the same category. So I'll just do this for a minute. I'll come back to my list. I'm going to make a new category. I know, I'm not finished yet. I'll go back down below in a minute. Oh, whoops. I think that's. So I'll mock up a new category object and we'll attach each product to that mock category. So I'm going to repeat this twice more. Just copy it, paste it. I'll make product ID 20. So I'm making 3 mock products and adding each one to our list. Just give each one a unique ID and a unique name, maybe change the price. So we're making 1 mock category and 3 mock products. And each mock product is attached to the category. So now we want to add these products to our context and call save changes. We're not saving them to SQL Server, we're saving them to our in-memory database. So we can call context.product.add. So this populates our mock database with 1 category and 3 related products. And then our context is injected into our controller. So our controller doesn't care where the database comes from, so long as we're giving it an instance of a database. It can be real or it can be in memory. So all this code is going to run when we initialize.
That for each loop, what exactly are we doing in the context class? Product is what? So it's like a database or what?
That is our model. So it's our product model. We're adding each one, right? If we look at the product controller, if we go to create post when we're adding a new product, right? Takes the product from a form, calls context.add, and then save. That's save. That's what actually commits it to the database.
And here it doesn't say context.products.add because we're in the control.
It does. It's because the object here is called the object from the form is called products. We're doing the same thing. We're creating new product objects, and then we're adding them one at a time to our database, and then committing all those to be saved to our in-memory database. So we're creating objects, adding them to our context, and committing them.
Yeah, I guess I'm just confused why we wouldn't say context.add in the same way we did in the controller.
Tell us what kind of context.
Oh, wait.
So here we do context.products.add, in the controller we do just .add, and so I wasn't really sure until I understood why.
Oh, I guess we don't need to. All right, to keep it consistent, that's just habit. I guess it knows. It's smart enough to know. Sure.
Well, if it doesn't work, I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, no, it should work. You're right. It works in the controller like this. Okay. Let me see why my... Object reference not set to an instance of an object. So there's something we're using that we're not instantiating.
Oh, okay. You gotta find the, is there an error that shows showing up.
But it says object not set to an instance of an object. So something we're using.
Yeah. Maybe
Hmm.
context exists.
So our category is new. If I comment all this code out in test initialize, I think it works. Let's just see. Just going to do this for a minute. Comment that out. My test should run. And if so, we know something's wrong with our mock data. Okay, so the mock data is what's breaking stuff. Let's see why. So I think because I've turned the live unit testing on, as soon as I save the changes, it runs the unit test. I don't have to rerun it. Things start failing. We'll just comment out a few pieces at a time until we figure out the problem. Still there. Okay. So I can create my mock category. That's okay. I could.
We're not filling every single thing, but sometimes we use it needed, right?
There's one thing I'm not sure. It's creating them.
So here's our list of products. Interesting, it says it's never used. Oh, because we never instantiated the list. Well, that was silly.
Oh, at the top.
Yes, I declared the list. Never instantiated it. That's why. We've got to instantiate our list. Right.
You know, that fixed everything.
Yep, because we're trying to add things to a list that has not been instantiated. Okay, so I can put all my initialization code back.
Is there a way to have like a global set of fake data?
Yeah, we could probably put this in a, we could put it in a separate class.
And then just reference.
Yeah, and reference that class. Yep.
Rather than have to rewrite this in every controller.
Well, every controller is probably going to have its own set of data, right? In the categories controller, we don't need a list of products. We're only interested in a list of categories. Okay, so now we can write a method that says test method index loads products. So to act, what do we want to do? So we're going to call index, and I'm going to get the result. Which we'll call index. We'll do the same thing. We'll cast the iAction result to a view result. Oh, whoops, sorry, dot result. So the same two lines from above. But what we're interested in now is the model property. We want to inspect the data that came back as part of the views model. What data did the method send back? So we're going to create a list of products. And because this object is of type view result, it has a model property now. So this model will give us the data that the controller method passed. And now we can do our assert. So instead of assert, we actually want to use collection assert. We're going to compare our mock list with the list that came out of the index method, and those should be the same. So we're expecting our product list. We mocked in initialize, and our actual is the model. And these should be the same. So this test passes as well. There's a one gotcha here. Our list in our controller, it's just returning the products by product ID. It's sequential. We didn't add an order by. If we wanted to order the products alphabetically in our method, and if we added a dot order by product dot name, our unit test is going to fail. Actually, in this case, it wouldn't fail because our products, I think by default, yeah, are ordered. So if I called this product 0, just for fun, I'm going to do that. If it's product 0, so they're not in our mock data in alphabetical order, but I do an order by here. So if I save this, I think my test is going to fail. Right. It says my element at index 0 is not the same anymore. Because here, they're ordered prod 0, prod 1, prod 2. But my list is prod 1, prod 0, prod 3. So it's the same list, but it's not in the same order. So the test actually should fail in this case. Right? That's the expected behavior because our controller method is sorting things, but our unit test isn't checking that they're sorted. So in this case, we would probably want to need to sort our current list. Doesn't know what to do here. We need to reference the link package. I'll just go and do it. If we use system.link, and then convert to a list.
Using system,
.linq.
what exactly is that?
It's language independent network query. That's the query syntax we've been using all along for the wheres and things like that, where we totaled the shopping cart, where we selected all the items, multiplied them together, and kept the running total. So it's a query language Microsoft invented. So all of these Lambda expressions, they're all LINQ everywhere. So now this is a better unit test because it properly checks not only that we're getting the same data, but in the exact same order. Now, if we didn't have an order by in the controller method, we don't need LINQ and we don't need an order by here. Now, I wanted to unit test the whole controller. Good news for you guys. We're not doing the lab, and you're going to have to do far fewer unit tests for your assignment. The goal was, the idea was, what I wanted to do today is we were going to write the unit test for index and details together, and then I was going to split you into groups, give each group a different method in the controller. Like you might get the delete post method, and your group would just write the unit tests for that method. And then I'd put them all together, publish them on Blackboard, and kind of together the lab would help you write the 20 unit tests you needed for the assignment. I'm not going to ask you to go and do the edit, the create, and the delete unit tests for the assignment. Can't assess you on something we haven't a chance to do together. So we got 15 minutes. We can do the 3 unit tests we need for details, and that's all you have to do for the assignment is unit test the index and details methods for one controller. If you do the rest of the unit tests and figure out how to successfully, you're going to need, like I said, you'll have to write about 5 tests. If you want to do the rest of the controller, you'll need to do about 14 or 15 more on your own. If you successfully unit test all the methods, I'll add some bonus marks to your grade. Okay, so it's there. If you want to do it, you can. There's no penalty if you don't. Tolu. Not the right time. We'll deal with it next week. Send me an email and I promise we will deal with it next week. Okay, so we have a details method. Let's look at the details method quickly. How many different scenarios do we have here when we call that URL of product details? How many things could happen?
Well, it looks like you could basically return either a not found for having no ID.
Right, so someone calls details and doesn't put an ID in the URL. That's one scenario. We should unit test that one. What else could happen? Josh? Okay, but what's this? Yes, but what are the scenarios? So one scenario is we get a call to details and there's no ID. What's the second scenario? Right, we have an ID value, but that ID doesn't exist in the database. So again, we're returning not found. And lastly, yeah, return an object. So again, we probably also want 2 unit tests for this. We should specify that it loads the correct view, and then we should check the data. That if we pass in ID 10, we get product ID 10 back. We don't get product ID 20. So we need 4 tests, but they're all quite similar. So we can do these tests and you need those tests in your assignment. You do need to write them. You can't just download my test class from GitHub, go find replace, here you go. The only way you will learn it is if you actually write them. They're not that complicated. So we'll call details details null ID. We'll kind of go through the scenarios in the same sequence they would happen in the method. So we want to call details. It's not letting us do this. Yeah, so we can declare so we could pass in ID. So our, whoops. Actually, might be easier just to pass in a null. Can we do this? Yes. Okay, we don't need to. So we pass in a null. In this case, we're going to use this. We're going to check an instance type. And sorry, this should be dot result. So the result we're going to get is a HTTP not found. So this is what we expect if we call details and we don't give it an ID. Well, look at what it returns. It returns. So that's the type, the native type representing a 404 error in .NET. It's a HTTP not found result. So that's what we expect to get if you try and call details and you don't give it an ID. So that passes. That's what we get. We can copy this one quickly. And this will call it details invalid ID. So what could we pass in here?
A random ID.
Anything except 10, 20, and 30, because those are the values in our in-memory database. So if I pass in 11, that should give me a not found result because there is no product ID 11 in our mock database. If I pass in, if I pass in a 10, my test is going to fail. It's not returning a not found result if I give it an ID that's in my database. Anything other than 10, 20, or 30 is going to work. Are details valid? So we'll say details valid loads view. So if we pass in a 10, we want to make sure we get back the view called details. That's the product ID we're passing into details. Here's our details method. So Serge, it would run at this URL, right? In the web app, product/details with a number. That page is going to go and query for that product. If there's no ID passed in the URL, it gives a 404. If it passes an ID value, but that product doesn't exist, it also returns not found. If we find the product, we're going to load the detail and pass that product object back to be displayed. So in here, actually, I think I could maybe even do this in one line. I could cast this whole thing as a view result, I think. And then we can check assert dot r equal details and our result dot view name. So we did this in a couple different lines of code before. First, we called the method, then we got the result and cast it as view result. You want to use less typing, we can do it in a single line. So if we pass in a 10, it loads the details view. And then the last thing we want to check is if we pass in 10, 20, or 30, then it gives us back a product object. So we'll do one more. I know I'm going quickly. It's Friday afternoon. So valid ID loads product. My act is going to be the same. Call details, maybe I'll pass in a different number this time, because 10, 20, and 30 are all valid IDs. They should all give me back an object. So I'm going to cast my result as a product object. Oh,
Result.model.
thank you. It's the model. So the data that's included and sent to the view. And then my assert. And there we're going to check R equal, in this case, that it's product 2 should be equal to my model, because ID 30 was the third element in my mock data. And I had 10, 20, 30. So the third product should be equal. Which it is. So we can see where we got to. We're probably not even at 50% code coverage in the product controller, because we didn't do, there's both get and post for create, edit, and delete. We haven't tested any of those. That was supposed to be the lab. Noah, did you find anything to run your unit tests yet?
No, I think it's ready for extension.
Okay, I will have a look. So we're actually up, we can talk more about it. We're up to 20% overall. And in our products controller, we're only at 6 because most of the code is in the other methods. That's a fascinating question. I have no idea. So index and details, products index is 100%, products details is 100. All the other methods are at 0. So if we had time to write the other ones, which was supposed to be the lab, we'd be over 90% in here. So I will modify the assignment instructions. Okay. So you only have to write unit tests to cover the different scenarios in index and details. You still got to mock up the data. I don't want to see IDs, you know, whatever you built. The IDs shouldn't be 10, 20, and 30. Make up your own. Those are mine.
11, 12.
Right.
21, 31. All of them will just be 1, 2, 3.
So pick one of your controllers, mock up the data in it, and write the unit tests for index and details in there. You'll also want to make sure in your return statements for those two methods, make sure you explicitly name index and details so that it explicitly knows what view names to load. So I'll modify the assignment instructions. Your workload for the week just got lighter. Next week, our last class, we're going to build, kind of like we started building our Node and Express API, we're going to build a web API for low ballers using .NET Core. Okay, question?
Yes, mine's a bit of a lengthy one. So
Okay, if it's a question about your individual project, then ask me after because we don't have to, I don't have to keep everybody here for. Is this about your project or just a general question? Sorry? Okay.